Do you want to know more about Trump sending the National Guard to Portland? To begin, it's no secret that I've expressed my fears about people that I love being targeted by the Trump administration. Whether it's over LGBTQ plus or systemic racism, attack on the poor, and mass deportations of Hispanic or Latinx people, my heart has been heavy. What's worse is I don't see the Catholics or Christians saying enough about the truly horrific decisions that our federal government is making, nor the gaslighting or deflecting any responsibility. My faith has taught me to live the Beatitude, and yet I've missed the mark myself in understanding that the world I live is full of hatred and judgment. My own struggles for myself and Trump's second term in office really allows me to find my voice in a way that refuses to be silenced when the world around me is in suffering and people's voices are being stolen. It's funny, my confirmation saint was Saint Teresa of Avila, a doctor of the church. I chose her because my dream was to be a MD. But Saint Teresa was a doctor of the church in a way that she brought something that was needed. I think about her and I contemplate my own call to give a voice to the marginalized. And I carry hope for the reformation of the church that seeks justice and service. My heart is called to give a voice to the immigrants and people of color. Yesterday, I saw a video about what was going on in California City, and I'll admit to you, I cried. To know that people are being treated as if they are not even human is the most heartbreaking situation I can't even imagine people to be in. And yet, these atrocities are happening right under our noses. Recently, the city of Portland made headlines by taking a definitive stand against the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, commonly known as ICE. This action was prompted by a series of permit violations attributed to the federal agency occupying a building in Portland. The city launched an investigation and ultimately decided to give notice to ICE due to these violations, which signaled a significant confrontation between the city of Portland and these federal operations. Advocates for this eviction argue that it reflects Portland's commitment to uphold city regulations uniformly, regardless of the entity in question. In contrast, some critics question whether local authorities should have this level of authority over federal operations. This ongoing debate captures a critical crossroad where city governance, federal law enforcement agencies, and public opinion intersect in complex ways. The city obtained ICE data via the Freedom of Information Act request, or FOIA, and included in the official notices, it shows 25 instances since January in which ICE held a person for more than 12 hours. On the 26th of January alone, agents held 16 people listed as citizens of Venezuela, El Salvador, Honduras, and Mexico, as well as other countries, for more than 72 hours before transferring them, according to public records obtained by The Guardian by their street groups, investigators, or reporters. The city's notice also said that the building was illegally altered when exterior windows were boarded up without proper approval. An ICE spokesperson did not respond to a question asking when the wood was installed, but photos and video taken at the protests and posted on social media show the boarded up windows first appearing around June 16th. But the use of this particular detention center is similar to what we may have seen in and around Los Angeles, in which these are a temporary holding facility, are only meant for people to be there for less than 24 hours and before being transferred to their permanent detention center. What has been shown on investigations is that people are kept for longer than 24 hours. And this detention center is not properly set up to provide meals, medical attention, or even sleeping facilities. What ends up happening is people are pushed all together in enclosed spaces, sleeping on the floor with minimal accommodation. Someone who is being detained simply for a violation having to do with their immigration status is a civil offense. It is not a criminal offense that warrants being detained with handcuffs. For people to be detained, their rights are withheld from them. It's horrific. This is just tip of the iceberg when it comes to the Department of Homeland Security and specifically ICE. What oftentimes happens is that these facilities severely limit anyone from going in to monitor or report about these conditions. In large part, this is intentional. I recall in my work experience at a psychiatric hospital, it was known that the patients' rights advocates who are monitoring these hospitals for any injustices or conditions that are against our basic human rights. Many times the people doing these audits would not be allowed onto the floor unless they had an appointment. They would designate a specific person to meet with them. They would tour the facility itself. And again, this is intentional because they don't want you to talk to the patient. They don't want you to talk to the staff who are actually boots on the ground, because there is a risk that staff and patients may spill the beans on the ways that they are violating plight and detention and the working conditions. The hospital that I worked on was notorious for this, or in fact had several lawsuits against them. Yet this doesn't change because the people who have a right to investigate are not allowed to do so. The same can be said for these ICE detention. If an organization or a business truly had no problems with tours and inspection, they would allow for inspectors to come in at any time. This calls into question, at least in my mind, why this might be the case. Is what ICE and Department of Homeland Security have something to hide about their facility and the way detainees who are human, regardless of their immigration status. And at the same time, Department of Homeland Security, along with the rest of our federal government, are not known for giving truthful information. This I found to be most disturbing, especially from the start of the whole concept of fake news that Donald Trump brought to the forefront of popular culture. Has that turned into outright disinformation and lies. So, in hearing from Department of Homeland Security, I take everything that they say with a grain of salt. I've been very distrustful of any reports that they give because misinformation, especially in light of who the Secretary of Homeland Security is. Moving on into another corner of the country, eyes are on California, where a detention center has been spotlighted for harrowing human rights violations. This facility is designed to keep immigrants for extended periods and has been accused of unsafe condition and inadequate medical care. This detention facility was a prison out in the Mojave Desert. Being familiar with California City, a part of Kern County, and to understand area, it is very close family. The video that I saw yesterday, what photographer was on their way to a planning meeting, and they decided to stop at this facility and saw that there were many 10-passenger vans, and it appeared facility was already utilized. There was news that this had officially begun housing immigrant detainees. The person in the video looked at these 10-passenger vans, and as they looked in, they saw cages. Normally, when we think of a van transporting people from courts, transfers and such, we have the benches on the side. But these particular vans had 4 cages. If people were being transported in these 10-passenger vans, they needed to step into it. That in itself, my heart feels so heavy and cried because the idea of putting people in cages smaller than your average jail cell, and those jail cells are pretty tiny. So do people had a civil charge, which does not necessitate a situation that would handcuff someone and or warrant a such treatment, or even labeling as any sort of criminal. I'll go more into that to talk about the other aspects of this horrific. In this California City detention center report, were coming in from human rights organizations detailing instances of severe neglect and mistreatment, prompting a public outcry and demands for a thorough investigation. These events fundamentally challenge the core principles of human dignity and justice in United States. This outcry from activists and citizens alike is a call to action, demanding transparency, accountability, and a systemic overhaul of immigration detention protocols. What is even more troubling in this process of detention and mass deportations is that the people on the forefront of leadership making decisions are people like Stephen Miller. The more I learn about Stephen Miller, the more I understand that harm and abuses are into white supremacist neo-Nazi address at the Charlie Kirk Memorial, which was met with applause. And Christy Noem's own beliefs about liberation, especially liberating California, in sending the National Guard to help ICE officers. A lot of speak that comes from a white Christian nationalist movement who seeks to rid the U.S. of people of color and anybody who does not fit into the white Christian narrative. Bringing and dehumanization is the goal. Their dehumanization, people who had immigrated this country and are paying whether or not we're citizens or not, it's only made more clear on the white Christian national agenda in the format Project 2025. When looking at these two separate yet connected stories, we can see a broader narrative unfold. In addition to the closing of Alligator Alcatraz, upwards of 200 people have disappeared. Their account and whereabouts are unknown after being taken to Alligator Alcatraz. The federal government, Department of Homeland Security, has lost them, and there is no way of finding them. Also adds to the fears and sadness in my heart of how much they truly do not value human life. The situation in Portland, as they were trying to bring attention to these injustices that were happening, Portland being a sanctuary city, was trying to hold accountable Department of Homeland Security in these injustices that were taking place. Stance of the Department of Homeland Security was, that's not true. None of those things are happening. Hold information. That's not true. And if you continue to get in the way of us being able to do our job at this particular site, then there will be consequences. The mob mafia boss of President Trump, that whole situation decides that in order to enforce ultimate power of the federal government over the city of Portland. Again, this calls into question what exactly Department of Homeland Security height. Additionally, California City, which opened up the cover of night, it doesn't even have permit or anything that it needs to run a legitimate business in this state. This is similar to Alcatraz. The federal government just thought, I'm just going to go in there and I'm going to do what I'm going to do because of the federal government, and not aware of or pay any attention to what is needed in order to carry out this within this. We might think, okay, well, maybe they don't need those regulations. If the federal government is allowed to come in and do whatever they want without any sort of repercussion, Portland and the state of Oregon would have no way of regulating and advocating for the people. Keep organization and businesses from doing the horrific things that are happening and taking place within detention centers. If we take away any guardrails that the state has in regulating, we will see more injustices in place, or maybe not. Maybe those injustices will fall behind a wall of silence, which no one is allowed to say and advocate for themselves. We already see this with President Trump's executive order to due process and legal representation for people who need support in their immigration case. It makes me question how legitimacy that these federal organizations have protecting the right of human. Cities like Portland are increasingly challenging federal operations and to support the people being treated fairly and justly. The California City detention and these incidents forcing this reevaluation, the federal immigration system, efficacy, and humanity. Together, these stories reflect a nation grappling with its identity as local governments and civil rights advocates push for policies that align more closely with humane and just principles. The entire process of immigration and path to citizenship is flawed and broken. This is only more fractured by Doge and this big ugly bill is now intending to rid this of any sort of due process and in some ways to halt it altogether, and as they are pursuing this mass deportation. I know that there's arguments about, well, if they came here legally, this would not be happening. And while I would love to believe that, I had people in my circle who have gone to their court cases are on the path to citizenship, and their court cases are being dismissed for no reason, and then subsequently picked up to being deported. If this was truly about paths to citizenship and legitimate means and immigration to this country, those things would not be happening. People would be allowed to pursue their court cases and to citizenship and due process. And this is not taking place. I really challenge you to consider that people are coming in and attempting to do this the right way, either through asylum or naturalization, and they are not being allowed to complete this process. In fact, the DOJ has been getting rid of immigration judges who are more friendly to the path of citizenship and now replacing them with JAG lawyers who are not trained in immigration policies. Their movement into immigration now eliminates the availability of legal consultation for any military member. And so, whereas before, military officers and people enlisted in the military were allowed to consult as to whether orders were in line with the Constitution and legal. Our military does not have that availability anymore. The challenge as to whether or not something is a legal order or not is become very workful, especially when it comes to young men who are entering into the military or who have recently entered into the military, who may not know to question or be familiar with the law governing their actions. This was obvious, especially in the last couple of weeks in which the military decided to blow up 4 boats without any sort of investigation off the coast of Venezuela. The Venezuelan government is reporting that crews were not carrying illegal drugs into the United States, that these were private citizens. There is no way to know this, given that there was no legitimate investigation done, which is the reason why these type of behaviors are allowed, because everything requires an investigation to make sure that these actions are done properly. And that seems to be gone at this point. And so we have no idea whether or not innocent people are being killed and what the purpose was, other than to show power and force of Trump and his executive regime and proving something during the same day he has a court case, which is very interesting. This call for change in the government, most importantly in Department of Homeland Security, is becoming not just a call, but a resonating demand across cities, state, and national borders. We have to bring more attention to these things that are happening with people in this country, people of color, people who are immigrating to this country, people who are just trying to live their lives, be targeted. I want to go more deeply into immigration data that is made available by Syracuse University's Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse, which is called TRAC, shows that as of September 21st, over 70% of ICE detainees have no criminal conviction. Christino reported that only people who had criminal convictions or criminal cases would be deported and picked up. However, according to TRAC, ICE classifies an individual as a convicted criminal if they have been convicted of any criminal violation. These violations can range from serious felonies all the way down to a purely immigration violation, such as an illegal entry, which is a petty offense under U.S. Code, or a violation which results in only a fine. And examples of this is not keeping your dog on a leash, fishing without a permit, or driving a vehicle without a taillight. In light of that information, it really seems that these cases for detainment and deportation, when you consider the range of activity, on one hand, might be an appropriate recourse. And on the other hand, is like using a bazooka gun to take out a fly. That's what we're dealing with here. And I'm glad that Alligator Alcatraz has been closed, and it's precisely because they did not have their environmental impact report or any of permits that were needed in order to run Alligator Alcatraz. California City does not have the proper permits and licensure to have this facility opened with detainees. Portland, Oregon, another is a place where they are actually in violation of those permits and permissions allowed by the state. This calls to mind a bigger problem in which the federal government is blatantly disregarding collaboration with the state and is seeking to keep the work they do in the dark and to prevent information from getting out. The scary thing is that even when information gets out, for example, the border czar under Christino, who was investigated and shown to be given a bribe of $10,000, his case was closed, and it was said nothing inappropriate happened and that he was being set up by Biden. California City, I looked it up, and there was little to no information about these facilities even being open. It took a Google search to find more information about what was happening there. It's really important to share what is going on within these ICE detention facilities and to call into action the decisions that are being made by our federal government to silence dissent, to enact cruelty and injustice to the most vulnerable of people. As someone who is a person of faith or any sort of altruistic part of yourself that sees value in serving people and community, I really encourage you to feel empowered to speak up. These injustices are being carried out, and the direction that our country is going into really will suggest that at the end of the day, ignorance is not an excuse. something must be done. We must speak out. We must advocate. Because we don't know, if nothing else, we don't know when we're going to be the next on the chopping block, to include us and to think through the lens of empathy. If this was happening to me, would I want someone to advocate for me? We will counteract all of the horrors that are going on in our country right now and around the world. We need to talk. We need to share. We need to build connection and build relationships and stand up for each other. The years in leadership have taught me that leadership is not only in what we say and what we stand and represent, but also what we don't. If we think as leaders that standing up for certain things, but not saying bad things, is the way to go, the saying the bad things and not speaking up against the bad things is just as significant. At the end of our lifetime, do we want to be known as the people who allowed things to happen because we couldn't be bothered? I will see you next time. Build community, love each other, build connections. See all the ways that you can support and serve each other in your local community and the world around you. Speak out. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment, and if you like this video, like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.